In the quiet town of Meadowview, the local branch of Capital Apex Bank was known for its strict protocols and polished reputation. Samuel Green, the branch manager, prided himself on running a tight ship. Every day, he donned his tailored suits and confidently patrolled his office, believing himself the gatekeeper of financial integrity. It was a typical Monday morning when a woman walked through the heavy glass doors of the bank. Her presence immediately turned heads. With her natural grace and a bespoke gray blazer that spoke of quiet power, she exuded authority. She carried a slim tablet case and walked with purpose to the nearest counter. "Good morning," she said softly to the teller. "I'd like to deposit this check into my account." The young teller, Dana, took the check and blinked at the figure written on it. 6 figures. Her hands trembled slightly as she glanced between the check and the composed woman before her. "Ma'am, this is quite a significant amount," Dana stammered. "Could you please step into the manager's office? He'll need to approve this." The woman nodded without hesitation. Of course. Dana led her to Samuel Green's office, knocking lightly before entering. Samuel, engrossed in reviewing loan applications, barely glanced up. "Mr. Green, there's a client here with a high-value check," Dana announced nervously. Samuel finally looked up, his brow furrowing at the sight of the woman. His eyes flickered to her outfit, her calm demeanor, and then to the check in Dana's hand. Something about her presence unsettled him. "I'll take it from here," he said curtly, gesturing for Dana to leave. The woman handed over the check, her expression unreadable. "Here are the details," she said simply, placing her account documents alongside it. Samuel scrutinized the check with exaggerated care, his lips tightening. "This is quite a sum," he remarked. "Where did it come from?" The woman raised an eyebrow. "The details are listed on the check, along with my attorney's contact information." Samuel leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "Even so, it's my responsibility to ensure that all funds we accept come from legitimate sources. This will require additional verification." Her voice remained steady. "You have all the information you need. The check is legitimate." Samuel's tone shifted, his skepticism now unmasked. "You must understand, it's unusual for someone to deposit an amount like this. What exactly is your business?" "I run an investment firm," she replied evenly. "This deposit is from a routine transaction." Samuel leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Routine? For you? I don't see many clients of your background conducting business like this." There was a long silence. The woman's gaze hardened, but her composure remained intact. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice low. "Look, I'm not accusing you of anything," Samuel said hastily. "But large sums like this, especially from lesser-known businesses, raise flags. I have to protect the bank." The woman said nothing. Instead, she calmly took out her phone and began typing. Samuel frowned. "What are you doing?" "Contacting someone who can clarify this situation," she said coolly. Before Samuel could respond, the door to his office opened, and Emily Sanders, the regional vice president, walked in. Her tailored suit and sharp heels clicked against the floor as she surveyed the room. "Samuel," she said briskly, "I received a call about a potential issue. Care to explain?" Samuel stood quickly, flustered. "Emily, this client presented a very large check, and I was performing due diligence. It's just a precaution." Emily's sharp gaze landed on the woman, and her demeanor immediately softened. "Ms. Vaughn, my sincerest apologies for any inconvenience. I assure you, this will be resolved immediately." "Ms. Vaughn?" Samuel echoed, his confusion evident. Emily turned to him, her expression icy. "Samuel, do you even know who you're speaking to?" Samuel stammered. I assumed she was a client." "She's not just a client," Emily said, her voice laced with irritation. "Ms. Vaughn owns a controlling stake in this bank. You've been interrogating the woman who signs your paychecks." Samuel's face went pale. "I didn't realize." "Exactly," Ms. Vaughn interjected, standing. "You didn't. And yet, you felt comfortable questioning my integrity based on your assumptions. I hope this isn't how you treat other clients." Emily nodded in agreement. "This behavior is unacceptable. Ms. Vaughn, rest assured, we'll address this immediately." Samuel could barely stammer an apology as Ms. Vaughn gathered her things. Before leaving, She turned to him one last time. "You should treat every client with the respect you think someone like me deserves," she said calmly. "You might be surprised who's watching." As she exited, Emily turned to Samuel, her expression grim. "We'll be having a serious discussion about your future at this branch." The door closed behind her, leaving Samuel to sink into his chair, his career hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, Dana, the young teller, couldn't help but smile as she watched Ms. Vaughn walk out. Dignified and unshaken, a quiet storm that had turned the bank on its head. The air was tense in the conference room of Summit Trust Bank's flagship branch as Olivia Vaughn, a prominent figure in the financial world and owner of the bank, quietly reviewed her documents. Moments earlier, she had been subjected to an unnecessary and demeaning delay in processing a legitimate transaction. What came next would reshape the branch and its leadership forever. "I just wanted to ensure everything was in order," stammered Samuel Green, the branch manager, visibly rattled as the regional director, Rachel Carter, stared him down. "That's enough, Samuel," Rachel snapped. She turned to Olivia, her tone shifting to one of respect. "Ms. Vaughn, I'll personally handle your transaction. Please make yourself comfortable in the lounge while I resolve this." Olivia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gave Samuel a measured look, a gaze that sent an unspoken message. This wasn't over. Then, with the poise of someone who knew her influence, she exited the office without another word. Samuel began to speak, desperation creeping into his voice. "Rachel, I was only—" Rachel cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "You just made a serious mistake, Samuel. There will be consequences." While Rachel escorted Olivia to a private lounge, Samuel remained in his office, panic beginning to take hold. He stared blankly at the paperwork on his desk, sweat forming at his temples. His career, once so secure, now felt as though it was teetering on the edge of collapse. Rachel returned to his office minutes later, her demeanor colder than before. She placed a thick folder on his desk. "Samuel, do you even realize who you just disrespected?" she demanded. He hesitated, then replied defensively, "A client with a suspicious check. I was following standard protocol." "Standard protocol?" Rachel's voice turned icy. "That so-called suspicious check came directly from her corporate account. Did you even bother to review her portfolio?" She flipped the folder open, revealing financial records that showcased Olivia Vaughn's unparalleled contributions to the bank. Samuel's face drained of color. "She owns a majority stake in Summit Trust Bank," Rachel continued. "That's right. The woman you just humiliated is the single largest shareholder. She could have your job with one phone call." "I didn't know," Samuel stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "You should have known," Rachel retorted. "But instead, you let your biases guide you. And now you've jeopardized not only your career, but the reputation of this branch." Meanwhile, Olivia sat in a quiet lounge, sipping water thoughtfully. The door opened, and a young teller, Mia, stepped inside, carrying additional paperwork. "Ms. Vaughn, I hope I'm not disturbing you," Mia said softly. "I just wanted to apologize for what happened earlier." "I tried to intervene." Olivia offered a warm smile. "I noticed, Mia. Thank you for stepping up. It speaks volumes about your character." After Mia left, Olivia placed a call to her assistant. "Danielle, I need a meeting with the board. Schedule it immediately. This branch needs a serious review." By the time Rachel returned to Olivia with confirmation that her check had been processed, Olivia had already set her next steps into motion. "Thank you, Rachel," Olivia said calmly. "But this isn't something I can overlook. We'll talk soon." The following day, Olivia convened with Summit Trust leadership at the bank's sleek corporate headquarters. Seated around the table were key figures, including Rachel and a visibly nervous Samuel. Olivia began, her tone measured but firm. Yesterday's incident wasn't just about a check. It exposed a deeper issue, one that threatens this institution's core values. She turned to Samuel. "You misused your authority to question a transaction that had no red flags. Let me be clear. This wasn't about following rules. It was about personal bias. That's unacceptable." Samuel opened his mouth to protest, but Olivia silenced him with a raised hand. "Don't try to justify it. You ignored clear documentation, disrespected a client, and failed in your duty." She then addressed the entire room. This is a systemic issue. If we allow these attitudes to persist, we'll lose the trust of our clients and the integrity of our institution. That's why I'm implementing the following changes. Olivia laid out a series of reforms. Mandatory training. All staff will undergo training in cultural awareness, inclusion, and client relations. Process reviews. Internal procedures will be audited to eliminate any bias or loopholes. Complaint mechanisms. A dedicated system will be introduced for both employees and clients to report discrimination or misconduct. Rachel, Olivia said, turning to the regional director, I trust you to oversee these changes. Rachel nodded firmly. Consider it done, Ms. Vaughn. Finally, Olivia turned back to Samuel. As for you, Samuel, you've lost the privilege of leading this branch. You can resign quietly, or the board will launch a formal investigation. Either way, you're done here. Samuel slumped in his chair, his confidence shattered. A new era. Later that week, Olivia returned to the branch that had sparked the upheaval. Mia, the young teller, greeted her with a cautious smile. It's good to see you, Ms. Vaughn, Mia said. Olivia smiled warmly. Mia, I meant what I said. Your integrity didn't go unnoticed. If you're interested in advancing your career, I'd like you to work more closely with our leadership team. We need people like you. Mia's eyes widened, her cheeks flushing. Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. That means so much. As Olivia walked out of the branch, the employees and clients who had witnessed the events of the previous day watched her with newfound respect. For Olivia Vaughn, this was more than just another day at the bank. It was a turning point for Summit Trust, a testament to the power of leadership rooted in fairness and accountability.